Texas now has new laws meant to boost border security.
Will help to deter illegal immigration and support our law enforcement response to the Biden border crisis.
How action from the governor aims to boost barriers and add new penalties for crossing the border. But one new border law is already in limbo, with a court challenge launched.
Going to not only complicate an already complicated area of law, but it's going to just mess it up completely.
We look closer at the push to block the law, both in the courts and in Congress. And what do Texas voters think? New polling looks at attitudes toward moves made by state leaders and the potential effect on next year's elections.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Will Dupree in today for Josh Hinkle. Border Patrol agents faced record-breaking levels of migrants crossing into Texas early this week. Pictures from the border show women and children among the crowds making their way across the Rio Grande. So many people crossed on Monday that Customs and Border Protection closed 2 rail bridges from Mexico and redirected agents there to help process migrants. It's the first time that's ever happened. In Eagle Pass, more than 4,000 migrants crossed the border on Monday, which set a record. This drone footage gives some perspective of the scale of the surge. You can see the fencing set up in this field to organize the processing of migrants there. And as the drone lifts a little bit higher, you can actually see the Rio Grande. The video shows groups of people wading across the river to get into the U.S. They're migrants seeking asylum who surrendered to Border Patrol after clearing barriers of shipping containers topped with razor wire. CBP reported more than 12,000 migrant encounters on Monday alone. Numbers from the agency show most of the migrants are coming from Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Honduras. As agents work to process the surge of migrants, Governor Abbott traveled to the border to sign 3 new border security bills. They include new funding for the border wall and new penalties for people who cross illegally into Texas. The governor says the new laws show how the state is stepping up where the federal government is falling short. As Monica Madden shows us, opponents are pushing back.
Mr. Biden, build up that wall.
At the Texas-Mexico border,
An enormous wall that is being built by Texas, paid for by Texas taxpayers.
Governor Greg Abbott officially approved spending $1.5 billion for continued construction of the border wall. The governor says it's necessary to protect Texas from cartel activity.
The FBI director warned that the border poses a threat to national security.
It's on top of the $1.6 billion Texas appropriated in 2021 to build more border wall.
Texas lawmakers have estimated that it could cost anywhere from $20 to $30 million per mile of border wall. So with this new money appropriated, the state could be seeing anywhere from 50 to 75 more miles of barrier amongst Texas's shared 1,200 miles of border with Mexico.
The governor also signed 2 other bills into law, one that stiffens the penalties for human smuggling and another that will make illegal entry a state crime. The laws not welcomed by everyone in the valley.
It seems so extreme for something that I feel can be worked out in a very different way, in a very different manner.
A group of locals voicing their opposition, steps away from the governor's event.
My community, a community full of immigrants, a community vibrant, a community that welcomes immigrants year-round, and so this is despicable.
Conflicting opinions likely to be tested in court.
Monica Madden, State of Texas.
The legal challenge to the border security law came quickly. On Tuesday, the American Civil Liberties Union sued the state. They say Senate Bill 4 is unconstitutional. The ACLU claims the law invites racial profiling and will lead to arrests across the state. Critics point out the law allows any police officer in Texas to arrest someone on illegal entry charges, even hundreds of miles from the border. Supporters of the law, though, say that's true, but the focus is on the border.
I've said all along that I thought that 95% of the enforcement of this would be within 50 miles of the border. I still believe that. But that's not to say that you couldn't have an instance in Texarkana or in Amarillo or something.
Texas argues it's the state's responsibility to fill gaps left by the Biden administration, while immigration lawyers and activists worry it will lead to unconstitutional detainment of lawful citizens. This law will take effect in March unless it's stopped by a court. More than 20 congressional Democrats asked the Department of Justice to also file a lawsuit and attempt to bring this law to a halt before it's enacted. One of those Democrats is Greg Casar of Austin. I spoke with the congressman about what comes next. You joined a total of 21 congressional Democrats who sent a letter to Attorney General Merrick Garland about Texas Senate Bill 4. Why do you think the U.S. Department of Justice should intervene in this law to block it from taking effect?
This law, Senate Bill 4, is just a show me your papers law that promotes discrimination, but it also makes us less safe. We need our police working to investigate crime. We need our police working on issues of violence. Nobody wants our police officers to now be immigration enforcers, something they haven't been trained to do, something that constitutionally they're not allowed to do. And for them to be stopping or pulling people over because they suspect them to be an immigrant just isn't right. And it doesn't make us any more safe.
We know of at least one lawsuit that's been filed challenging this law from taking effect, but Governor Greg Abbott has said that he would promise to take this all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court if necessary to uphold the law. What do you think the odds are of that, and what would you think the outcome would be?
Well, Governor Greg Abbott is just continuing to kiss up to leading presidential contender on the Republican side, Donald Trump. We just heard Mr. Trump the other day say that immigrants are, quote, poisoning the blood of our country. I mean, nothing could be further from the truth. It's just wrong. It's embarrassing. It's not Texan, and it's not constitutional, which is why I, alongside so many other Texas Democrats, alongside leaders like Joaquin Castro, have asked the Department of Justice to block this law from going into effect. I actually just the other day spoke with Attorney General Merrick Garland directly about this issue, and we discussed how Senate Bill 4 is not only anti-immigrant, it is not only dangerous, but it's unconstitutional. So he and I had that direct conversation. We delivered a formal letter asking the Department of Justice to block this unconstitutional law, and I've had that direct conversation with Mr. Garland about the need to protect our communities from this unconstitutional and dangerous overreach by Governor Abbott.
Yeah, that was my next question. Have you heard anything back from the DOJ yet since that letter was sent and since this conversation was had?
I heard directly from Attorney General Merrick Garland that they are very aware of this issue. And I think you recently saw a statement from the White House talking about how this bill is wrong and it's dangerous. So I hope that we will see formal action by the Department of Justice to block this law. Think about it. You want immigrant community members in our state to be able to report crimes without fear of retaliation. This bill is it's malicious, it's dangerous, it's unconstitutional. And I expect, based on what the White House has said and what Attorney General Garland has said, that we'll do everything we can to block this law.
Stepping back just a little bit, do you think that Democrats are doing enough to talk about border solutions? Republicans are certainly drawing attention to this issue, so I'm wondering what your thoughts are about that.
We need to make sure that the public can see that the Republican officials in D.C. are doing everything they can to make issues at the border worse. In fact, the latest congressional proposal from the Republicans is they want to withhold military dollars that are needed in the defense against Russian invasion. And they want to hold that hostage until Democrats agree to make it harder to immigrate legally to this country. That's just wrong. We need to make it so that if you are fleeing from desperation or violence or persecution, that you have an easy legal pathway to apply to enter this country rather than for folks to be in these big tent camps on the border. So I think that Democrats need to be very clear that we actually have solutions to this challenge. We should work on changing our foreign policy so that less people are starving in Latin America and don't have to get pushed out of their home countries. We need to make sure that we open up more legal and orderly avenues for migration.
Are there areas of compromise that you can identify right now that you think there would be some common ground between what Democrats would like to do and what Republicans would like to do?
I think we need to get back to where we were about 10 years ago. There was a Democratic and Republican joint proposal to update our immigration system for the first time in my lifetime, make sure that people that have been here for decades, like our dreamers, finally have a chance at citizenship, open up more legal pathways for migration. And Republicans were for all of those things, along with some enhanced staffing, for example, at the border. I think those are the kinds of compromises that we could have a discussion about.
The fight over the new law is playing out in Congress and the courts, but it's already having an impact in many communities. Why it's an issue that straddles countries and cultures. What do Texans think about the changes on the border? We dig into new polling that looks at the response from voters to the state's new laws.